adjourned for the JEA Board of Directors meeting, June 23rd, 2020, 9 a.m. I call the meeting to order and we'll have a time of reflection. Thank you. Are there any introductions, Paul?
No, Mr. Chair, not that I'm aware.
Okay, then if I could get a motion, we'll adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Paul, can we have a safety briefing?
Yes, we can. And then, Mr. Chair, on that last item, I had a request from Councilman Salem. If possible, could we move the pay for performance review up in the agenda so he would have an opportunity to view the debate before his 11 o'clock committee meeting?
Okay.
And
let's do that.
With that, I'll give the excellent. With that, I'll give the safety briefing. Safety is a core value at JEA. It is at the forefront of all of our work. There are two safety briefings today. One, a reminder for the pandemic, COVID-19, for all of us to basically take extreme caution as we see an expansion of the virus in our community. Masks were appropriate. At JEA, we have a mask rule in place for all facilities at all times. And wash your hands, use hand sanitizer. And this not only goes for the time at work, but personal time as well, to be very cautious and out in the community. Secondly, we are in summer, as we can all feel from stepping outside. And this is the time that everyone should exercise caution with respect to the heat and heat exhaustion, heat stroke signs. Hydrate. Drink as much water as you possibly can if you have any outdoor activity. That's my safety briefing, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Jody, do you want to give us the sunshine law?
Yes, sir. Good morning. This is Jody Brooks with OGC JEA Chief Legal Counsel, and we have properly noticed this meeting of the JEA Board for this morning. We are providing the meeting in being conducted in media technology through WebEx, which is allowed under the Florida Executive Order 2069. Not sure if that order will continue for our next meeting. Maybe it'll be a face-to-face meeting next time. But we are allowed to have this meeting by WebEx. Quorum is present. It appears that all 7 of the board members are here and accounted for. So we have quorum. We have the proper notice. Minutes will be taken. So we're in good order to proceed. And Landon Todd is going to walk us through at this time the public comment period. I believe, unless we've I guess we've changed the agenda somewhat to provide for Danny Beckton's comments. Paul or Mr. Chair, do you want to go ahead and have Landon walk us through the public comment section and then call on Mr. Beckton if he's here?
That's fine, Jody. That's great.
Okay, great. Thanks, Landon.
Thank you. Once again, my name is Landon Todd. And for those that are new to the WebEx technology, I'm going to go ahead and give a brief overview of the controls before we go into public comment. If you are joining us via the desktop interface within WebEx or a smart device, such as a smartphone or tablet, you may move around the screen and will see a series of buttons at the bottom. The very first one that you may notice looks like a red microphone with a slash through it. If it's red, it means you are muted and will be on mute for the majority of the meeting unless recognized to speak. If you are recognized to speak and you are asked to provide a comment or providing public comments, you will click on that button and it will turn dark, gray, or black. This will mean that you are unmuted and everyone on this meeting can hear you. I do ask that you use the mute option to mute your line when you're not speaking. This will allow us to reduce the amount of background noise in the meeting and have a productive meeting as possible. Also, if you'd like to see who is participating in today's meeting, you can look over 3 buttons to the right to find an icon that looks like a person. If you click on that, it will bring up what's called the participant list. If you're on a mobile device, it will pull up in front of everything, and if you're joined on the desktop machine, it will come up on the right side of your screen. This will allow you to see a long list of individuals who have joined this meeting. Also, for today's meeting, we have enabled the chat capability. If you touch your screen or scroll next to the person icon, you will notice an icon that looks like a caption bubble. If you click on it, it will bring up the chat window. Please remember that this meeting is being recorded, and I ask that you please be professional. But if you run into any difficulties during this meeting, you can chat me directly, or if you would like to, during the time for public comments, you can type comments to everyone. Also, during today's presentation, you may wish to actually zoom in to enable easier viewing of the charts and data presented in the PowerPoint slides. If you're joining from your desktop client, on the left side of your window, you will see 2 icons that look like a magnifying icon. This will allow you to click the plus icon to zoom in and the minus icon to zoom back out. Now, those are the major controls for the WebEx meeting today. Now, for public comments, we will be using the WebEx raise hand feature. During this section, I will ask for those that wish to provide comments. We will then display a 3-minute timer as we recognize you to provide us those comments. If you're using the WebEx client, this feature is located within the participant window that I mentioned earlier. At the top of the list, your name will be visible, and to the right, you will notice a gray icon that looks like a hand. If you click it, it will turn blue, letting me know that you would like to be recognized for comment. For those that have called directly into the meeting, which we do have a few here, there are 2 different ways for me to be notified that you would like to provide comment. The first that we're going to talk about is *3 on your telephone. This will raise your hand, and also *6 if you wish to unmute your line. If you unmute your line, we do ask that you state your name so that everyone may hear who is speaking before providing your comment. As we go through this meeting, as always, I am the moderator for today's meeting and have the capability to mute everyone's line. I will only do so to ensure that the meeting runs smoothly. As it is 9:10, we will proceed with the public comment section of this meeting. We are going to go ahead and start with asking Madrika if there's any public comments were provided by email that need to be recognized or put into the record. Madrika, do we have anything that came in via email?
No, I don't have any public comments via email for the record.
Okay, thank you very much. I am now going to roll into the second portion of the public comment section. For those that have joined the WebEx client, if you would, please raise your hand at this time if you wish to be recognized for public comment. And we'll give a few seconds to go through this. Seeing none, I'm going to go to the second portion of the raise hand feature. For those that have called in directly, you may unmute your line or press *3 to raise your hand. And we'll give a few moments for that. Okay, seeing no, sorry, I do have a raised hand. Miss Valerie, I see you in the chat window. You are now recognized for public comment. You may unmute your line, and you have 3 minutes. Miss Valerie, can you hear her? We're unable to hear you. We do see your microphone is unmuted. If you would like to use the chat window to send us your public comment, please do so now. Okay. She has requested that she call in. We will give her one moment. While we're waiting for Valerie to join us to dial in, I am going to also recognize someone else that has also raised their hand for public comment. We have, I will try to pronounce this correctly, Zachariah Kosner. You are now recognized if you would like to unmute your line, and we will go ahead and proceed with a 3-minute timer for your public comment. We do see that your line is still muted. I am going to go ahead and unmute your line to facilitate for public comment. Please stand by. Zachariah Kosner, can you hear us?
Sorry. Hello? Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, this is Valerie.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay, we will go
How
ahead
you
and
doing
at this
this
time
morning?
switch over. Very good.
Okay.
We will go ahead and set the timer for 3 minutes for your public comment. Please proceed.
Okay. Yeah, sorry for the technical difficulties this morning. My name is Valerie Gutierrez. I am the business manager of IBEW 2358. But I am calling on the behalf of what we have is a group called Northeast Florida United, and that consists of all of the 5 JEA locals, unions, as speaking collectively. But within these last couple of weeks, I wanted to say that we've gathered together and collected, and we'll be making a donation of $18,000 to the Neighbor to Neighbor Fund as a gesture to the community to let them know that we are there for them as they were there for us. So, you know, this is just a little bit of giving thanks back to the community, and we hope that the rest of the we'll have other, people, donating to the Neighbor to Neighbor program, which we think is an excellent program as we get ready to, the disconnects, start coming in. I know that the city council have made another big gesture donation that, over $5 million. So we know this is just a little bit, but we feel like this is our way of giving back to the community. So we just want to say thank you to the board for all that you guys are doing currently, and we look forward to working with you more in the future. And as I said, the Northeast Florida United is also part of, is consistent of IBW, JSA, LIUNA, 630, Ask Me, and PEA. So we are all looking forward to working with you guys, and thank you for a few minutes to speak on that behalf.
Valerie, this is John Baker. I just wanted to tell you how much I, on behalf of the board, appreciates that gesture. That is above and beyond. You're nice to say it's not much, but it is quite a bit, and we're grateful for you and really appreciate you doing it.
Well, thank you very much for your leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Valerie. We also do have other raised hands in today's meeting. I would like to go ahead and recognize Zachariah Cosner. They have requested to go ahead and provide comment. Let's go ahead and attempt this again. Your line is unmuted, and we will go ahead and start the 3-minute timer. You can go ahead now.
Oh, sure. Thank you very much. My name is Zachariah Cosner. I'm with Florida Conservation Voters, and I would like to use my comments to urge you and the board to do anything in your power to reconsider the July 7th date for beginning reconnections. We have a variety of reasons that we believe it is inappropriate to start disconnecting people from their power at this time. Just last week, we saw the greatest spike in coronavirus cases in the state of Florida since the beginning of this pandemic. We have several days in a row having 3,000 to 4,000 new cases in the state of Florida every single day. We're also anticipating that the knock-on effects from the coronavirus pandemic are only really beginning to rear their head in terms of people losing jobs, losing employment, continuing to suffer from unemployment, and with federal funding appearing to be no longer on the horizon for people to use to pay rent, pay for their bills, etc. We believe it would be an incredibly destabilizing thing to now essentially kick many businesses, many individuals who have been struggling to deal with this pandemic off of their power. It would completely destroy the type of housing security that people need now more than ever. Furthermore, it would be a really unfortunate time to further destabilize the conditions in which people, especially the most vulnerable people in our society, are living. We're already encountering massive protests in reaction to ongoing discontent with the ways in which people have been treated by police departments across this country, as well as by municipalities. And adding this to the already simmering inflamed fires of social unrest would not do anything to prevent further destabilization as Jacksonville prepares for a massive, massive event in the form of the Republican National Convention. The city is already getting ready to expend huge amounts of money for their police department to ensure civil security. And you know, a drop of prevention is more than a gallon of cure. By not further destabilizing the conditions in which people are living, by not further immiserating people, by kicking them off of their power in the midst of the highest spike in a massive pandemic that we've seen, and by at least giving people some time to recover from the economic impacts of the coronavirus pandemic, which isn't projected to end or isn't projected to peak until the wave of layoffs we're expecting this next quarter, or starting in August. We believe it would be completely inappropriate to start disconnecting people at this very critical time while we are basically suffering the most we've suffered as a result of this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair.
Paul, do you have anything you want to say with regard to that?
Here that I'm unmuted. To the board members, we have worked with the city council and the administration in identifying funds, and there is a proposal on the city council agenda for voting this evening that would release $2 million of funds to help offset and the impact of reinstating our policies. I think the two or three things to keep in mind that while we're reinstating the policies, we've had a 1 month notice. We've worked collaboratively with the city council in an extraordinary way to come up with what I think is a great solution and shows the involvement of many of the council members. There was good debate and discussion on the July 7th date. I think most felt that it was important to try to put put a point in time to reinstate the policy, but to have the resources available in the $2 million, as well as with many of the nonprofits and those that provide support for the less fortunate in our community, to try to ensure that we can have as minimal effect as possible. So I think this is an extraordinary effort, in my view, in my years at JEA, in working with JEA, with the City Council and the administration, to put together a solution here to try to mitigate the adverse impact, or the possible adverse impact of reinstating the policy. Thank you, Chair Baker.
Paul, isn't it true also that we're not saying that we're going to pull the plug on July 7th? We're saying that we need to have discussions to work out a 6 to a 9 month payout period. So that's quite a little bit different than turning the lights on.
That is absolutely correct. Right now, it's speaking out and reaching out to the community through a series of mailings and texts and emails and phone calls to all of those customers that are currently in that status, to work with them. And we have been doing that for the last couple of weeks now, and we'll continue to do that right up until the 7th. And once we make connection, we review the account, and we look to try to get a modest payment in that can keep the account current, and work towards a payment plan where we've extended terms. Normally, a payment plan would be 3 months. It's as much as 9 months for balances, and elimination of any disconnect, reconnect fees, elimination of credit card fees will continue through the fall. So you're absolutely right, Chair Baker. It's not a hard stop here. It's trying to work out solutions with the influx of money from the City Council, with our nonprofit partners, and with our customers and JEA contributing in terms of payment plans, extension of payment plans out over the 9 month period.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Positive. That's really you expressed your point very well, and this board will talk about it later in the meeting.
And may I ask a follow-up question on the July 7th date, and just ask whether it was considered or developed that particular date with the understanding that we would be at this particular moment in the crisis, experiencing a peak at this particular moment? And do you think that the peak might constitute a reason for reconsideration of that particular date?
Paul, can you answer
Mr. Chair, I think I can say with respect to Mr. Cosner, the date was debated at least 2 City Council committee meetings over the last 10 days, and there are certainly pros and cons to both sides of that debate. And we just say that it was vigorously debated. And in the end, the council felt having a firm date, whether it was the 7th or the 14th or the 30th or even well beyond that, felt having a point in time where we could work to a solution for these customers and try to get them back on track, as opposed to having the potential problem build up to such a point that we would not be able to recover from it. The individuals wouldn't be able to recover from it. And so that was part of the conversation that occurred. But I would say that the committees that I participated with landed pretty firmly on the 7th. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Are there further comments? Public comment?
There is. I'm going to go ahead, Mr. Chair, go ahead and go back through the list. We have, I think, 2 additional people that have dialed in. For call-in user 18 from prefix 904483, I see your hand raised and your line is unmuted. If your phone number is 904483 and the last 4 digits anonymously, it is your turn to go ahead and provide public comment, and we will go ahead and start the 3-minute timer now. Once again, if you are call-in user from 904-483, your hand is raised and your line is unmuted. If you would like to go ahead and proceed with public comment, you may do so now. Okay. I'm going to remute your line. If you wish to provide public comment, go ahead and unmute your line again, and we will go to technical support. We do have another call-in user whose line is unmuted. Just want to make sure that if you wish to provide public comment, you are able to do so. For call-in user number 6, calling in from 904-571, if you wish to provide public comment, you may do so now. Hearing none, I am going to give everybody an opportunity for calling any other additional call-in users. If you are calling into today's meeting and we're unable to do *3 to raise your hand, you may press *6 to unmute your line now. Mr. Chair, I'm going to go through the list one more time just to see if there is any follow-up questions from people that have joined the WebEx client. Just give me 1 second. Mr. Chair, I do not see any additional raised hands at this time for further public comments. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. The next agenda item is the council liaison's comments from council member Danny Beckton. Danny, are you here today? I will assume, therefore, that he's not here, and we can move on to the consent agenda. We have board minutes for the meeting of May 26th. Jody, can we take all 4 of these together, or the 2 action items together, or should we do them separately?
Sir, because they're on the consent agenda, you can take the consent agenda as a whole with 1 motion and 1 vote for all 4 items.
Can I get a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Is there further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Okay, now we'll go into board consideration items. Paul, will you introduce the senior leaders?
It would be my pleasure, Mr. Chair. We will bring up on the screen, Landon, and introduce the individuals. First up, in alphabetical order, Stephen Datz is heading up our as Chief Information Officer, our IT. Stephen's got 30 years experience in the IT field. Most recently, was Director of IT Infrastructure and Compliance Assurance. Previously, it served as Director of Technology Infrastructure and Manager of Technical Services. Stephen has a Bachelor of Science and in Information and Systems from the University of North Florida. So go Ospreys. Salute to you. Next up, Bruce Dugan. Bruce has over 30 years of electric and water and wastewater utility experience. He is our interim Chief Customer Officer. Bruce led our Customer Satisfaction Improvement Initiative, which moved JEA's residential customer satisfaction index, as measured by JD Power, from 116 out of 121 up to the mid-20s, and so extraordinary from the bottom to the upper half of the first quartile. We did that in 3 years. That's a record that still stands with JD Power for customer satisfaction improvement. in their measure is in less than 5 years. We also, at the time, under Bruce's leadership of this initiative, which was a broad-based initiative, I might say, and incorporated all employees' activities, we moved from the bottom quartile in our business index to the first in the country, or number one in the country in J.D. Power customer satisfaction for our business customers. So Bruce holds a Bachelor of Administration from Columbia College. Ricky Erickson, our interim general manager for the electric system. Ricky started as a co-op at JEA in 1989. He's worked in our systems operation department. He's managed the bulk power operation, had leadership positions in transmission and distribution maintenance, substation and transmission maintenance, and most recently was senior director of transmission and distribution. Ricky holds a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from the University of Florida, and he is a NERC, System Operator Certified team member. Next up, Angie Hires. Angie served as JEA's Chief Human Resource Officer from January 2013 through April of 2019. He's a career human resource professional, industry knowledge and experience in strategic and tactical levels. Her career has broad experience and knowledge in employee and labor relations, compensation, benefits, recruiting, training, and really just a broad spectrum of everything in the HR basket. Angie graduated with a degree in organizational management from Edwards Waters College, Master of Business Administration from Jacksonville University. Angie is a lifelong resident of Northeast Florida and born and raised in Duval County. Alan McElroy, next up, our interim Chief Supply Officer. Alan, and I always apologize to Alan, parenthetically, no relation to Paul McElroy. We had a number of questions on that point, so we've continued to communicate that for a while here. He joined us about 6 years ago from Duke Energy. He served as Director of Fleet Services and Director of Operations and Support Services. He finished a 32-year career at Duke, where he served as Vice President of Fleet Services and Meter Operations. Alan has a bachelor's degree in civil engineering and a master's of administration from Queen's University. Next up is Brian Roche, interim Chief Financial Officer. Brian began his career at JEA in 1983 as a co-op student. He served in roles of Director of Financial Planning and Budgets and Rates, Director of Meter Billing and Collections, System Planning Coordinator, Account Executive, Project Engineer, and he served as JEA's VP General Manager of the Water Wastewater from December 12 to June 18. Brian holds a Bachelor's of Mechanical Engineering from Georgia Institute of Technology, a Bachelor of Science in Accounting from the University of Florida, Master of Accountancy and a Master of Business Administration from the University of North Florida. Brian is a certified public accountant and a registered professional engineer. Next up, our Chief Interim Environmental Officer, Wayne Young, is a Jacksonville native. He has been with JEA for 13 years, and his career was preceded by a highly decorated military career. During his career at JEA, a variety of positions: Director of Meter Reading, Billing, and Revenue Collections, Director of Advanced Network Metering, Director of Industrial and Commercial Business Client Relations, and Director of Governmental Economic Development. So Wayne clearly has had a broad experience, and his last position was heading up one of the functions within our environmental sciences group. He had a distinguished military career, which is listed, but he holds a Bachelor of Science degree from the U.S. Naval Academy, a Master's of Science in Telecommunication Systems, a Master of Arts in Strategic Policy and Decision Making. Next up is Hai Wu, and Hai is Interim General Manager of the Water Wastewater System. Hai has nearly 22 years of experience in the water and wastewater industry. Prior to joining JEA, he was a design engineer and a project manager in the consulting field. He is joined JEA as a professional engineer in the Water and Sewer Expansion Authority. He served a variety of engineering positions, also manager of water plants engineering construction, and most recently director of water and wastewater and reuse treatment and district energy systems. I has a master's or bachelor's science degree in engineering, bachelor of science degree in environmental engineering, a master's of business administration from the University of North Florida, a master's of science in environmental engineering from the University of Central Florida, and he's a licensed professional engineer in Florida. Mr. Chair, this is an extraordinary group of individuals, and quite frankly, revealing their backgrounds and their contributions to JEA and to our community. I'm honored and, quite frankly, with their credentials, a little intimidated as to the professional standing and the knowledge and experience that this group has. So I present to you the interim senior leadership team for JEA.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to quickly say, Paul, your leadership, and John, your leadership to move from one executive team to another flawlessly just needs to be thanked and appreciated. Yeah. And these are extraordinary people, and we hadn't missed a beat. I want to thank Paul and John for their leadership in making this move as quickly as they did.
I'd just like to quickly also echo those sentiments as well to Paul and our chair. This is certainly a very experienced and highly qualified collection of folks, and I'd like to also say to you, Paul, that I'm glad to see what I think is a good collection of diversity in this group of new interim leaders. So thank you for your leadership in this regard.
Thank you.
Well, thanks to all of you. We look forward to working with you. The honeymoon is over. Let's get to work. If we could now go to Joe Orfano. Is Joe going to do the monthly operations and financial dashboard?
Yes, he is, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Joe?
Good morning, Chair Baker and JEA board members. This is Joe Orfano, JEA's treasurer. Landon, if you could pull up that first presentation, that'd be great.
Tell us which page you're on for the ones operating in the blind.
19. Yeah.
Page 19. We're going to skip. That's a pretty busy slide. It doesn't lend itself very well to WebEx. So, Landon, if we could move to the next slide, that would be terrific. Thank you.
Mr. Baker, if you're looking at the presentation board package, that was 155 pages. Page 32 is where we're currently at.
Thank you, Jody.
Thanks, Jody. Let's start out with the year-to-date financial results for May year-to-date relative to May of 2019. The figures you see on this slide represent the 8 months ended May 31st. I will provide the May 2020 1-month results because I think the 1-month results tell a better picture of what we're dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. For the electric system, territorial megawatt hour sales were down 11% relative to May 2019, with residential sales declining 6%, commercial 16%, and industrial 12%. Mild weather played a role in the lower unit sales as total cooling degree days were down 26% relative to last May. As indicated on the slide, year-to-date degree days were down 4%, with megawatt hour sales down 2%. We are continuing to evaluate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on our electric unit sales. For the water system, total KGAL sales were up 2% in May versus May 2019, with residential increasing 6%, commercial and industrial declining 5%, and irrigation sales increasing 1%. Sewer K-Gale sales increased 4% in May 2020 against May 2019, with residential up 10% against a drop of 4% for the commercial and industrial unit sales. The mild, dry weather led to a decline in rainfall in inches of 18% in May 2020 compared to May 2019, with year-to-date rainfall actually up 6%. Again, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic remains under review by our team. A further overview of the May 2020 year-to-date results can be found in the simplified earnings report in Appendix D. Next slide, please, Landon. Thank you. So this slide is where we get to the meat of the operations performance, and I would call it a consistently stellar operating performance. For the electric system, grid performance measured by Katie, and not being an engineer, I'm going to describe for the viewers what these acronyms mean, because I think we throw a lot of acronyms around in our business. This one is the Customer Average Interruption Duration Index. And that index was negatively influenced by a severe storm in early February. Reliability, as measured by SEMI-4, which is customers experiencing more than 4 outages of 1 minute or more in the past year, remains quite good year to date. The one environmental permit exceedance remains on track relative to the fiscal year 2020.
Am I the only one that can't hear Joe anymore?
Just going to say the same
No,
thing. I think we've lost
too.
Joe.
It appears that he's muted.
Joe, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. Let me go back. Apologies. I don't know how that happened. So I was talking about, I think I left off with reliability by SEMI-4. And that's SEMI-4 is customers experiencing more than 4 outages of 1 minute or more in the past year, remains quite good year to date. The one environmental permit exceedance remains on track relative to the fiscal year 2020 goal, while the E4, which is the equivalent forced outage rate, is marginally on target due to April forced outages at the Brandy Branch and Northside generating stations. On the water wastewater side, unplanned water main outages are slightly. I'm sorry. Can everybody hear me okay? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. On the water wastewater side, unplanned water main outages are slightly above target, as an April pipe break on Racetrack Road was caused by an improper contractor installation. The water distribution system pressure metric spiked during the month of May due to dry weather conditions, resulting in a highest daily flow of 247 MGD in May, representing about 90% of the all-time water system high. Average daily flows remain well within the fiscal year 2020 consumptive use permit limits, while year-to-date nitrogen to the river and sanitary sewer outflow figures continue on track with fiscal year 2020 goals through May 2020. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Joe, it's Marty. I don't want to gloss over something that was pretty important in the dashboard. I know it's a busy slide, but if we can go back to it. It's the customer SAT scores for residential. We are in the second quartile. Do you know where in the second quartile we are? I mean, there's a big difference between on the cusp of being in the first quartile and on the cusp of being in the third quartile. And can you remind us our testing process for that metrics? Because that to me indicates that the ratepayers have trust the JEA again. So can you elaborate on that item?
Yeah, thank you, Marty. Can I defer to Bruce Dugan on that? I think Bruce has a better idea where we stand in that second quartile.
Of course.
And for those that are on the telephone from the board package perspective, we went back up to the dashboard, which is on page 31 of the board material.
Yes, top half of the second quartile is listed there. Is our goal. The 2020 year-to-date is second quartile. We're not in the top half of the second quartile. We're toward the bottom. Our second wave, we were 75th out of 141. So we're looking for some data actually this week. And so we hope to have some new numbers by Friday.
Great, thank you. Moving in the right direction.
Thank you, Bruce.
Sure.
Are there any other questions? Hearing none, I think we can move on to the next agenda item, Mr. Chair.
Landon, why don't you go ahead and tee up the next one, the budget?
Yes.
Okay, Joe.
Thank you, Landon. Could you go to the first slide, please?
Yes.
Thank you. So this is a lot of information for one slide. I apologize for that, but it represents a snapshot of the budget items and resulting metrics for both the electric and water wastewater systems. At the top of the page, you can see that revenues drive the total budget amount. Those revenues are a direct result of unit sales forecast. We are forecasting flat electric sales to the fiscal year 2020 budget for the electric side and a 2.7% increase in water sales in comparison to the fiscal year 2020 budget. This results in a $3 million reduction in the electric system revenues due to lower budgeted investment income and a $5 million increase in water revenue. Below that, you will see the City of Jacksonville transfer projections. This includes a city contribution of $120 million plus public service taxes and franchise fees. I will go through this in greater detail in the following slides. Next, you can see an overview of the O&M expense for fiscal year 2021. The takeaway here is a reduction in O&M in both systems in comparison to the fiscal year 2020 budget. 2021 figures reflect refinements of approximately $14.3 million and $5 million for the electric and water wastewater systems respectively relative to the May 2020 Finance and Audit Committee presentation, and that was presented last month. Next is a summary of the 2020 capital budget and the future plan through 2023. The electric system is planning on a $224 million capital investment, and the water system, $360 million. The water wastewater system has seen consistent customer growth, especially on the edges of the service territory, which necessitates large capital investment. These figures reflect 10% refinements compared to last month's FAC meeting as well. The electric system capital plan will be funded entirely with current year revenues. And I stress no new debt for the electric system. Water wastewater, on the other hand, will utilize the same. However, for the first time since I believe fiscal year 2012, we'll actually be borrowing some new money. and will bridge finance that capital funding through our $500 million revolving credit facility with takeout financing in the form of new bonds at a later date as market conditions warrant that. And again, we have not issued new debt since 2012. We're quite excited about that. Looking at the bottom of the slide, the end result is excellent financial metrics, exceeding all targets set by the JEA pricing policy. And I'll get into further detail on the pricing policy later in the meeting. Next slide, please, Landon. So
For
this
those on
chart,
the phone, Joseph, hey, Joe, I'm not sure if you have the page numbers for these.
I do not, Jody.
Okay.
Could you help me out with that? I do not have the page numbers.
Yeah, for those that are on the telephone with the board packages, we're on page 38. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. So page 38, this chart illustrates the total electric system fiscal year 2021 budget broken into expense categories and also includes all governmental transfers. So you can get an idea where your money goes when you pay your electric bill. The collective decrease in the O&M expenses, fuel, and debt service allow for an essentially flat budget year to year and an increase in available revenues to fund the capital plan, sustaining the pay-go philosophy that has improved our electric system balance sheet over the past several years. Next slide, please, Landon. Thank you. In the water wastewater system, this chart, just like the one you saw for the electric system, breaks down the budget items and government transfers so you can get an idea where your money goes when you pay your water wastewater bill. The increase in revenues due to sales, combined with the $13 million reduction in debt service, provides room for substantial increases in current year funding for the large but refined capital plan.
Joe, I just want to ask on this O&M costs for electric. You know, that's a substantial decrease. Can you just explain that quickly?
A few things are driving that, Bobby. First of all, there were significant legal expenses that were incurred, that will be incurred this year for the ITN process, and we've removed those legal fees. And secondly, Shearer had some outage costs, and those Shearer costs do not. It's counterintuitive. When they have outages, their capital spend is actually recorded as O&M for our electric system. So I can get the further detail behind those numbers, but those are the two primary factors driving that.
That's fine. Yeah.
Thank you. And so next slide is the transfers.
Wait a second, Jody. Yeah, make sure Jody's telling us telling those that are on the
Jody, can you help us out?
Yeah, so each time we go to the different slide, we're on page 40. So when you ask for the next slide, I'll just give a page number, so page 40.
Thanks, Jody. I really appreciate that. This chart represents government transfer history as well as a projected transfer for fiscal years 20 and 21. For fiscal year 2021, the city contribution will be $120 million, total transfers to the city $249 million, and total government transfers $303 million. In a May 2020 APPA publication, and that's the American Public Power Association, titled Public Power Pays Back, its analysis of public power government payments for fiscal year 2018 depicted public power utilities with total revenues in excess of $100 million, contributing a median of 6.2% of total revenues in government payments. JEA's ratio of electric system government payments to total revenues was 17.6% in fiscal year 18. That's well outside the third quartile of the APPA's analysis of 9.3%. And I would even add that 17.6% is conservatively calculated because we have excluded sales tax from that calculation because we didn't see a specific reference to sales tax in the APPA analysis. But if you include sales taxes, which is what we do to total that $303 million, this figure, the ratio of these government transfers to total revenues is actually just below 20%. So that is a significant contribution to the city relative to our peers. Next slide, please, Landon.
Page 41.
Thank you, Jody. So JEA staff is recommending the following to the board. Approve the proposed operating and capital budgets for fiscal year 2021. Authorize staff to transmit the recommended budgets to the Jacksonville City Council for final action by July 1, 2020, and transmit the 5-year capital improvement program as required by the Jacksonville City Planning Department. Secondly, asking the board to approve JEA's share of the St. Johns River Power Park and Plant Shearer operating and capital budgets. And finally, authorizing the interim managing director and CEO to adjust the budget approved by the board of directors and submit it to council, if necessary, within the total approved budget amounts for each system. Mr. Chair, our managing director CEO has spoken with the council auditor, and we plan to submit a revised operating and capital budget for JEA by July 8th. And Paul McElroy, do you have anything to add to that, sir?
No. What I would say is that we have a legislative requirement to pass and submit a budget on June 30th. Needs to be in the council by July 1st. And this budget represents our statutory requirement to present a budget. We've done, as Joe pointed out, in the last 3 weeks since we last met, we have done a good bit of refinement with respect to the O&M expenses and as well as the capital expenses. We will continue to dig in over the next 2 weeks, and then as we determine additional costs and refinements to the cost structure, as well as prioritization in the capital planning area, we'll go ahead and make adjustments and submit those on a schedule to the council auditors so they can be incorporated in the full budget. And then we'll bring that back to the board at our next meeting.
The only thing I'd add, Paul, is that we're spending close to $600 million in fiscal 2021, and I would scrub that budget, make sure. I know Brian just joined us, which is a great addition, but I'd take your time and be thoughtful about this capital budget.
It's a really good point, Bobby. I think in terms of looking at the numbers, both in terms of some of the organizational issues on the expense side and certainly some of the capital budget side, they were more aligned, I think, with a financial orientation and potentially, I would say, even a sale and building a capital base for any prospective buyer of JEA, and certainly not in line with where we are as a utility serving our customers. And so we'll continue that scrub and prioritization, absolutely. I think the other thing that's critical, and I would share with the board, is that we want to really get a good sense in the June numbers. The June flash numbers will be available for us on July 1st or 2nd for the sales in the electric system and the water sewer system. And that'll give us 2 months of full COVID-related sales adjustments, if you will, and economic adjustments. And that may call for our revised thinking as we go forward and go into the budget year as well. So we'll keep that in mind during this period of review. So Thank you. Any other questions for Joe? And
Mr. Chair, this is an action item that we will need the board to take action from a motion and a discussion and a vote.
And I don't see Mr. Baker Chair Baker on the list there, Bobby. So we may have to hand off to you to call for a motion and while John gets reconnected.
Can we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? The motion passes.
And to the vice chair, would it be appropriate to interject the pay for performance item here, given that it's about the budget and Councilman Salem has asked for us to move it forward in the agenda?
Absolutely. And before you start, and I'm just talking to Paul, but I appreciate all the work that you've done, Marty. Through Paul says that you've committed a lot of time and done an excellent job. So
oh, thank you. My pleasure.
I've heard that you've done a super job. Just want to thank you.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
So, Landon, we want to bring up 4G, and that's pay for performance. And Angie would take the lead in the presentation.
Will do. One moment.
And I have it in our diligent book as page 107 of 190.
Thank y'all for holding. Just one moment. Our technical support staff is pulling up that presentation now.
John, I think John just rejoined the meeting. So, yeah, for information purposes, John, we are moving the pay for performance plan, and want to reiterate that the time and effort that Paul said that Marty's put on this, I want to appreciate that. So with that, I'll hand it back out to you, John and Marty.
Good morning, Board of Directors, as well as participants of this call. I'll bring your attention to item board agenda 4G. I think in the actual board package, it's pages 99 through 103, but I did hear Chair Stein mention that it might have been on page 107 in the packet. At the request of JEA's Board of Directors, a review of JEA's Pay for Performance program was conducted. And the results of the survey that we conducted, which involved surveying from light utilities, particularly those within the large public power council, as well as some other city agencies. And again, the results of that survey is included in the board package. As a result of that review and feedback from a board workshop held on May 29, 2020, we would like to propose a revised pay for performance program for consideration by the board for the fiscal year 2021. As we previously mentioned, since inception of a pay for performance plan in 1990, the plan has consistently focused on incenting and driving exceptional performance while focusing on the key areas of customer satisfaction, safety, and cost control. We're proposing that these key areas with established metrics are retained as a part of the plan, and also included in the board package is a summary that details the goals or targets and the percentage of payout at each level of the plan. For fiscal year 2021 and subsequent plan years, provisions are recommended and will be in place to ensure appropriate financial controls and oversight. And those provisions that are recommended are all full-time and part-time JEA employees, with the exception of the managing director, CEO, and the senior leadership team will be eligible to participate in the plan. The cost of the program will be included in the annual budget, and it won't exceed 5% of total payroll, and it will be made available for review by the City Council auditor. The board will review and authorize the plan presented each new fiscal year and approve the plan payout no later than September of each fiscal year. The plan will be in compliance with Florida Statute 215.425, sub 3C, and this is a particular statute that dictates and guides how other compensation or compensation over and beyond base salary should be handled. All participants in the plan shall be eligible for the same percentage of payout based on achievements, regardless of their level in the organization, but the payout will not exceed 5% of salary. And if the board should approve the payout will occur following an audit of fiscal year end results that will be conducted as it has been in the past by our JEA internal audit department, and it will be made available to the City Council auditor as well. The estimated cost of the program for the fiscal year 21 is about $8.3 million if all goals are exceeded, and about $5 million at the meets level. But it will not, again, exceed that amount of $8.3 million or 5% of payroll. And again, the $8.3 million is based upon exceeding all of the goals as targeted in the plan. So at this point, we're recommending that the board take to approve the fiscal year 2021 pay for performance plan and the amended provisions.
Questions of Angie? All right, can I have a motion?
Move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? I would just comment that this is an incredibly thoughtful plan. I think I'm highly supportive of having this kind of incentive pay. I think it's very appropriate that the senior leadership team and the managing director not participate in it. Angie, what else is different about this plan from the previous one we had, and I guess it would have been 19?
One of the things that's different about this plan is that all employees within the plan, regardless of their salary grade, will all receive the same amount of payout based upon 5% of their salary. In the past, there was a graduated level based upon the salary level in the organization. So that's one of the changes that's different.
And Mr. Chair, I'd like to add that we went into this with a great deal of focus around controls and transparency. So the disclosure at the beginning of the budget year to City Council and the review by City Council auditors helps us with certainly the transparency place. And our putting this in the board manual, ultimately, it's interesting. We've got the governance agenda item later. I think the board manual does need to put this in place to ratchet up the controls even further. But there was a lot of conversation with Councilman Salem, whose primary concerns about this plan were controls and transparency. And I believe he's on the phone and is going to endorse this plan that we came up with together.
Thank you, Marty. Councilman Salem, are you on the phone? Okay, well, I know you've been talking to him, Marty, and just appreciate all you did. It is a good work product. Is there any further discussion?
No, I mean, Angie and Marty, just thank y'all for the time you put into this.
Our pleasure.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimously passed. Thank you all very much. Do we go back to the bond opportunities with Joe?
Thank you, Chair Baker. Landon, if you could pull up, and Jody, do you have a page number for this slide?
It's 48.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you. I couldn't get my unmuted button. He's correct.
Thanks, Bobby.
Page.
And Jody, I have a one-page update on the slide that you're looking at here. The refunding par amount's down about $50 million from what I presented at the last board meeting. However, the NPV savings are up to $62 million. That's a nice phenomenon to have. And while we prefer a larger bond offering amount to maintain and actually increase the PV savings is a great thing. This analysis is derived from our underwriter bond runs that largely show premium bonds, which is indicative of the municipal bond market. JEA has maintained a niche in offering parish coupon bonds that don't have a lot of premium, and they appeal to retail investors who don't want to pay a big premium to own JEA bonds. So I'm hopeful to see this par amount increase back over 400 million when we launch, while maintaining the PV or actually increasing the PV savings. So we're very excited to be launching this offering the week after the 4th. That's the week of July 6th. We had shown annual debt service savings at slightly in excess of $3 million. That's increased to $3.7 million annually. I'm going to push for 4. We'll see how we do. And as I stated at the last meeting, we have refunding delegation resolutions in place to allow us to launch this offering. Each of the board members received drafts of the preliminary official statements last week, and we intend to distribute marked copies here in the next day or so, with the intent of posting these preliminary official statements on MSRB's EMMA site toward the end of the day tomorrow. That's all I have in the way of prepared comments. Are there any questions regarding the bond refunding opportunities?
Questions? Joe, I have a question. Why did the total amount come down?
It came down because the underwriters assume largely premium bonds, which have higher coupons, and where investors actually pay a premium. So the par amount assuming a $100 par, some of these premiums can be as high as 11 to 20%, and that premium is used to refund the current bonds outstanding. If we issue more parish coupon bonds, meaning you're issuing closer to $100 par, you have fewer proceeds, so you need to issue more bonds.
I got you. Okay, thank you.
It's common to the municipal bond market, but very uncommon for the taxable bond market. We try to get as close to par as possible in the corporate bond market, based on my past experience.
Okay, this is not an action item, so if there are no questions, we'll move on to the fuels and generation planning update. Ricky?
Ricky, your line is unmuted.
This presentation starts on page 51.
Hello, board members. We're going to talk about our fuels and generation planning here at JEA. And just looking at this slide, it's a picture of our Brandy Branch generating station, which is about 750 megawatts. And you see a solar farm over there on the left. That's the Jack Solar Farm out near 301 and Baldwin. You can see that the footprint on this is about the same, but that solar farm is 90 acres total, and that's only showing about 20, 25 acres. So it's only good for about 12 megawatts, and our Brandy Branch is good for 750. So quite a bit of difference. Next slide, please. So this slide shows our customer demand forecast. You can see historical on the left and a forecast on the right. One thing to note here is our commercial and industrial customers combined generate our customer demand for them is higher than all of our residential customers put together. This just shows the importance of our commercial and industrial customers to JEA. Next slide, please.
53.
So this shows our system overview. So on the left, you see a chart of our existing generation capacity with the primary fuel listed, the facilities as well. JEA has a diverse mix of our electric generation resources, and they're dispatched economically based on the market price for fuel. You can see on the right the dispatch stack, which basically shows which units are more economical than others. You'll see in 19 and 20 that our combined cycle at Brandy Branch is our cheapest and most economical unit. One thing to note is our Shear 4 unit is up in Macon, Georgia. It's a coal unit, and you can see it's at near the top of the stack. This is important because Shear 4 used to be our most economic unit. This shows how the price of fuel has changed and what units are more economical than others. Next slide, please.
Ricky, before you leave that, would you go back?
Sure.
This is a nitpick, but I'm just trying to make sure I understand it. In fiscal year 20, it shows us dispatching Northside 3 before the simple cycle CT, even though the simple cycle CT is cheaper. Why would we do that?
On Northside 3 has some characteristics that allow us to give flexibility on our dispatch. It's a big unit, it's a 500 megawatt unit. So in dispatching 3, it has some superior operating characteristics that allow us flexibility to run the unit during the day. That's kind of the reason that dispatch kind of before our simple cycle CTs. Our simple cycle CTs also can start and stop at a moment's notice. Anytime there's a reserve call or something trips, we can start those really quick, and Northside 3 does not allow that capability. We can't start it for several hours. That's why we're running Northside 3 there.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Next slide, please. So here we have our fuel expense forecasting. So we have our units and our customer demand. So we use a tool to help us do this. So the JEA uses our ABB portfolio optimization software, where JEA models all of our unit characteristics into a program and inputs the market pricing to dispatch these units economically to get our best fuel forecast. So we have a 5-year forecast horizon, and we've really focused strongly on our current fiscal year and upcoming year, budget year, to get the closest and most current market pricing to help make the most economical decisions. CA provides our short-term gas and power market pricing and availability information. This is put into the model, again, to get our best economic result for our customers. This model is rerun at least monthly with constantly updating prices as the market changes to get our best result for our customers. These results are presented monthly to our senior leadership team at our fuel and purchase power committee meetings for their review. Next slide, please. So this graph shows our fuel revenue and our expense forecast. This graph is updated monthly with the results of our fuel group, the energy production model I just talked about. And again, it's presented to our fuel and purchase power committee. You can see on the left, our fuel balance as of April 30th was $72.3 million. We had a fuel credit in May and June of $27 million to our customers, which brought that balance down. But with the low price of fuel, especially natural gas, we expect that balance to build back up at the end of the fiscal year to around $75 to $79 million. So again, the natural gas and solid fuels market are less than what was forecasted last year. Next slide, please. So fuel diversity is important to JEA. Back in the 70s, we were completely dependent on oil. So when the OPEC embargo hit, it was really, really impactful to our customers. Ever since, JEA is very, very conscious about fuel diversity. On the right, you can see our various fuel sources, the amount, and the different fuels that we use. One of the key takeaways is our backup fuel for our Northside 3 and our combustion turbines. They normally run on natural gas, but natural gas is subject to price spikes in the wintertime and constraints on pipelines. So these units are all configured so we can use a backup fuel, which is either diesel in the combustion turbine or oil on Northside 3. This gives us some ways to mitigate the gas spikes and the constraints should they happen. So this is fuel flexibility and fuel diversity in our unit. Next slide, please.
We're on page 57 for those that are following along with the board package on the telephone.
So this shows our energy fuel mix. So in 2019, you see that natural gas played generate almost half of our electricity. That's quite a bit. That just goes to the price that natural gas is currently in the market. In our 2020 forecast, we showed we use even more, 64%. However, the low price of natural gas has also provided purchase power opportunities in the market. So we're expecting that number to come down between 50 and 54% for gas, and the purchase power to go up to around 10 to 12% of our total energy fuel mix for 2020. On the right, you see 2023 forecast. You see a couple of things start to come into play. You see the gray 13% there. That's our nuclear. That's the plant both coming online prior to 2023. So that's what this forecast is for 2023 from a nuclear perspective in our forecast. There's a little light blue section there of 6%. That's our renewables. So we do have some solar farms that are being under PPAs that are being built. They're expected to come online before 2023. So they're showing a little more of our energy mix in 2023.
Ricky, who owns solar power plants? The solar power fields?
The contract was given to a company called EDF. They're building all the solar farms, and we're just connecting them and taking them as a purchase power agreement.
Where are we in that process? Are we behind in that construction?
Yes, sir. They were delayed. They were supposed to be a little sooner, but they've been delayed to 2021 and 2022. We also delayed our infrastructure projects, our different substation and wire projects to match your date. Right now, it's 2021 and 2022 are the dates for all five.
And that's 200 megs?
50 megawatts each, so approximately 250.
Okay. So you feel comfortable with those dates?
I'm a little concerned about the 2021 date. I feel pretty good about the 2022 dates. Some of the earlier ones may slide into 2022, but I feel pretty good about the 2022 dates.
What is the cost of the solar today?
It varies. We have a legacy solar plant that's a little more expensive than the one we started with on our beginning slide out of Jack Solar. Some of the newer ones that are smaller, the 1 to 8 megawatt plants, they're much cheaper. They're right around our fuel rate. The new ones that are going in are actually less than our fuel rate. I think they're around $28 or $29.
That's amazing. That's great.
Next slide, please. So with all this energy, we also have a management policy around it. So we have our energy market risk management policy. This was developed in 2014, the JEA approved by the board. It was developed to identify risks associated with energy markets and to comply with the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Protection Act. It covers types of risks, oversight responsibilities, business practices, exposure, etc., for all of our energy transactions. The oversight of this policy was delegated by the board to our Fuel and Purchase Power Committee which I had mentioned earlier, that comprised of several of our senior leadership team members. Also, our fuel price hedging, we do some hedging of our fuel, and this is done in accordance with this policy as well. Next slide, please. So I mentioned hedging. So we do some hedging on our natural gas purchases. So first thing to do is set our price target, obviously. So our price targets are chosen first to get price protection at or below our gas price on which fuel rate is based. Then we'll look at the current and historical future markets as well as the indicators of the potential market to make good decisions on our hedging. We do consult with TEA on some pricing strategy and some market trends before making that decision. And we also target 50% of our projected annual use. So whatever we expect to use for our base load for our customers, that's really what we target for our hedging. And currently we hedge up to 3 years out from our current year, but we don't go past years right now for our hedging. Next slide, please. So here's the kind of a status of where we are. The green boxes in this slide show all the active natural gas positions we've locked in. So this is kind of where we are today. In the white column, it shows our natural gas price that would cause expenses and revenue to break even with our existing fuel rate. In other words, we can handle gas prices up to this level without having to raise the fuel rate. This is calculated without taking our existing hedges into account. It shows how far below our fuel rate that we've been able to lock in prices. We've been pretty successful at locking in these prices below our fuel rate. Next slide, please. So we have a policy, so we also have a report. So this is our Energy Market Risk Management Report. It's presented quarterly to our Finance and Audit Committee. It shows the status of our fuel budget, our physical contracts, all of our hedges that we have in place. And this is always done in compliance with our energy management risk, our energy market risk management policy. Next slide, please. This is another copy of an excerpt from that report. It just continues to show how our gas hedge positions continue to lower the price volatility and price protection against some of the cost exceeding budget. Just another snippet from that report. Next slide, please. And this is just another one from that report. It shows our visual representation on a graph. It shows kind of where we are in our hedging. Next slide, please. So with that, I mentioned TEA several times, the Energy Authority. So I'd like to introduce Joni from TEA. Joni is the CEO and president of TEA and has been with the CEO of TEA for almost 10 years. So Jody, if you would take it away.
Thank you, Ricky, and good morning, Chair Baker and JEA board members. I appreciate the opportunity to introduce TEA today. If you would advance to the next slide, please, Landon. I would note that JEA was one of the founding members of the Energy Authority in 1997 after FERC deregulated the wholesale electricity market. JEA recognized the need and the benefit of having an energy trading and risk management organization that was wholly owned by public power and dedicated to serving public power. So the Energy Authority, or TEA, was created as a nonprofit to be the arm of public power in the highly competitive wholesale energy and gas markets, providing the benefit of strength and size as well as economies of scale. Today, TEA is owned by 7 public power utilities, which are shown on the left of your slide, and we provide service to over 60 utilities throughout the United States. As you can see from the statistics noted here, TEA is very active in the energy markets and actually transacts one of the highest numbers of transactions among all of public power entities and that community-owned public power space. TEA has an office here in Jacksonville as well as in Bellevue, Washington. Both offices are staffed around the clock every day of the year to optimize and manage our clients' energy needs. So that gives you some sense of the activity. Landon, if you would please advance to the next slide. This shows a snapshot of the services that TEA provides to JEA. From a big picture perspective, TEA is JEA's interface with wholesale energy markets. So we work with JEA staff, work closely with staff to optimize the energy portfolio with the goal of managing risk effectively and providing lower cost for all of JEA's customers. Those activities include buying and selling electricity and natural gas, as well as all of the ancillary products to hedge fuels and manage the portfolio, optimizing power and gas transmission, and gas transportation, performing risk and market analytics, developing renewable natural gas capabilities, and analyzing JEA's automated meter infrastructure, meter data to achieve improvements and efficiencies there. So that's a very quick overview, but we wanted to give you that sense of who the organization is. So unless there are questions, Ricky, I will hand back to you.
Thanks, Joni. Next slide, Landon. So this slide shows many ways that TEA and JEA coordinates and collaborates on various items. Obviously, one of the biggest ones is our daily resource planning with SOC and our monthly natural gas planning. This allows us to get the best economical decision for our customers. Next slide, please. There's some more activities that TEA and JEA collaborates on. There's just several examples of how we coordinate and work together to bring value to our customers. Next slide, please. Some more market summaries that TEA provides JEA. You can see here we have some market trends in our gas storage and in the industry gas storage, oil production in the industry, some of our natural gas prices. So just again, more information that helps us make good decisions. Next slide, please. Another example of that with some oil prices and how the export is in the natural gas market. Next slide, please. So here on the left, you can see what volume we've done today in the market as far as JEA is concerned. You can see our sales volume is at 15,222, fairly low compared to our purchase volume of 823,000 plus. This shows the natural gas pricing in the market has provided power purchasing market opportunities. We've definitely taken advantage of that by purchasing power at less than our cost to, again, lower the cost for our customers. So it's a good coordination and collaboration with the Energy Authority. So with that, we'll transition into our energy system 10-year site plan. So Landon, next slide, please. Next slide, please. So this slide is our demand and energy forecast. You can see in the gray on the left, our historical, where we've been, and on the right, in the white, kind of where we're headed. One thing to note here is that the Florida Public Service Commission, basically Florida law, requires utilities to maintain at least a 15% reserve margin. So whatever you need to actually serve your customers, you must plan to have 15% more capacity available to deal with unforeseen events. This data is due to the FRCC, which is the Florida Reliability Coordinating Council, in March, so they can do statewide reliability studies and adequacy studies. It's also due to the PSC in April, so they can develop studies as well and maintain a coordinated electric power grid to ensure reliability is maintained in the state at a reasonable cost. Next slide, please.
We're up to page 73 in the presentation materials.
So this slide shows our capacity and energy. And capacity is just the total amount of units to put out. So if you add all the units together, this is our JEA total capacity at the top. The energy is a little different. It basically is based on economics. So what is a cheaper unit, more economical unit would tend to produce more energy. So you see at the bottom, again, the combined cycle at JEA is our most cost-efficient unit. And it generates almost over half of our energy. Right, I said earlier, about half of our energy total by one unit. That's pretty amazing. On the right, you can see some changes in capacity for 2029. You can see nuclear starting to take a little piece out of it starting in 2023, but 2029, we're definitely projecting nuclear to have a little more capacity out of it. But in the energy side, you can see it takes a bigger chunk out of it because once it's online and running, it's running all the time. So it takes a bigger piece of the energy pie. And you can see the combined cycle takes a little less in 2029.
Our next agenda item is going to be to talk about share. If anything happens with share, this 2029 would not be right, correct?
That's correct. If share is changed for whatever reason, that would go to something else. probably purchase power maybe or something of that nature.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So this is basically our reserve margin and capacity factor. So capacity factor is just how much you utilize a particular unit or your system of units. So as you can see on the left in the yellow diamond, we were right at 40% for our fleet of generators up to 2018. 2018, we decommissioned SGRPP, and you can see all our capacity factor went up to almost 50%. We're using more of our units to supply energy to our customers without power part being available. So it was a significant change in our system capacity factor. The green line shows where we have to be to meet our 15% reserves and our energy needs for our customers. And you can see that we're planning on meeting that through 2029. And to do that, we plan to have some horizon and some annual seasonal purchases to meet that. And the market is providing some opportunities there with the low gas prices. So that's kind of where we're all for our 10-year site plan. Next slide, please. This is our last slide. Just want to show where our solar farms are. So in 2022, we plan for them all to be completed. That's kind of where we are today. That's the schedule. So you can see kind of where we are on what we forecasted them to be as far as producing energy and producing megawatt hours. The blue shows the Trail Ridge. We're currently in a PPA, a power purchase agreement from the Trail Ridge landfill for landfill gas. That expires in 2026, so that's why it drops off past that to just the newer 5x50 solar farms and the smaller solar farms. And that's my last slide.
Questions? Okay, thank you, Ricky. That's a good run through. And we asked for everything about fuel, and we got it. And
thanks, sir.
It's very important, and we appreciate the time and effort you put into it. Paul, do you want to lead the plant share discussion, or is Joe going to handle it?
I'll talk to it, and then maybe Bobby can have a couple comments too. We continue to have very productive conversations with FPL regarding plant share, and we're gonna ask to defer any decision today until perhaps later in the week or at the latest very early next week. We believe that we have a good transaction, improved from what I've spoken to you board members individually about, and we continue to work with FPL to try to complete, if you will, the documentation over the next few days, and we'll be excited to advance it forward to you. Our objective in conversations with them was to really fully understand the partnership and understand the costs on both sides, and to work towards reducing costs and reducing risk. And I think we've been successful thus far in our conversations. Bobby, Board Member Stein, has been extraordinarily helpful in the conversations with FPL, and has kept the ball moving forward, and placed us, I think, in a great position. So Bobby, would you like to comment additionally as well?
Yeah, the one thing I'd say is, look, Florida Power and Light has been a long-term partner. There were some tensions between FP&L, the way they consider the ITM process, and the way our community, as everybody knows, feels about the ITM process. And we got through that in a very favorable discussion and started talking about if we can accomplish our goal at SHEAR, we will have reduced our coal interest and move to a clean energy interest, which we're working with them on. And I think we have a good working relationship that could be, if we can accomplish this moving forward on others. But the thing I'd say is we met as late as last night on this, and if we can accomplish this, Mr. Chairman, I think we will make a big movement forward on reducing our coal exposure and increasing our gas and solar exposure, solar in the later years. But I just want to thank Joe and Larry and Paul for all their work. It's been a lot of time and attention, and so that's what I'd say. And I think if we can get to a landing spot here, it'd be worthwhile having a board meeting the end of this week or beginning of next week to solve this issue.
Okay.
And Bobby, thank you for bringing up the ITN issue with our negotiating partner. I've been concerned about that, so I appreciate you addressing that head on with them. And since you're in favor of moving forward with them as a counterparty, I don't have any problems now. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. That you're doing an amazing job on that thing, as well as the many other things, and we really appreciate it. Alan McElroy, can you talk to us about our hurricane readiness?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I'll wait for them to pull up the slides.
Thank you, Alan. Alan, do you want the video first, or would you like the slides first?
The slide.
Okay.
The presentation in the board package will start on page 105 on the hurricane readiness prepared for 2020. The presentation starts on 105. Thanks.
Thank you, Jody.
One moment, Alan.
No problem, Linda. I know the delay is not due to a hurricane, so we're okay.
Thank goodness.
Okay.
It's all
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, good morning, everyone. Preparing for hurricane season with the backdrop of a COVID-19 restrictions is very challenging. But JEA is ready to respond and restore power and water to all of our customers. JEA's focus with our emergency operations will continue to be preparedness, mitigation and resiliency, response, and recovery. Next slide, please. I'd like to share with you some information with our hurricane season from last year. Our first event last year was on May the 20th. This year, our first disturbance was on May the 14th. It was the first named storm for the 2020 hurricane season. It was Tropical Storm Arthur. Last year, also, our strongest storm was Dorian, with a maximum sustained winds of 185 miles per hour that caused extensive damages to the Bahamas, but it did spare Northeast Florida and Duval County. On this slide, you can see that last year we had 18 named storms, we had 6 hurricanes, and we had 3 major hurricanes, which a major hurricane is Category 3 and above. NOAA's forecast for 2020 is 13 to 19 named storms, 6 to 10 hurricanes, and 3 to 6 that fall into that major hurricane category. Obviously, the experts are predicting an above average season. Next slide. We've learned many lessons from our previous hurricanes that we've had here in Jacksonville. Hurricane Matthew was our first hurricane that impacted our service territory in over a decade. We mobilized the largest workforce ever to restore power quickly and safely. We applied the lessons learned from Matthew to our preparation and response to Irma. We pre-staged our mutual aid crews prior to the storm's arrival, and we also improved the processes for mobilizing such a massive workforce. After Irma, we spent some time focused on hardening our electric, water, and wastewater systems so fewer people would be impacted when we do have storms hit us. We also implemented technology advancements, which would help speed the restoration effort, and we improved our communications to our customers and our community. Where are we today? Our track of continuous improvement has led us to incorporating the pandemic impacts into our preparation, response, and recovery plans. We're continuing to refine our technology for system reliability, and we're continuing to harden our electric, water, and wastewater systems, again, so that fewer people will be impacted. The improvements that we make to our infrastructure all year long just help position us to respond and recover quicker when a storm does occur. Technology advancements help for faster restoration and also better communications on specific areas of our service territory that have been impacted. Next slide. JEA has invested over $30 million in our electric infrastructure over a 4-year period on advanced technology aimed at reducing the time it takes for JEA staff to identify the location of the fault or the outage, to isolate it, and to complete the restoration work. Pole replacements, tree trimming, and other hardening efforts help to make our system much more resilient to storms. The utilization of smart meter data as an input into our outage management system allows JEA to respond to outages in a more efficient and effective manner. Next slide. Our water and wastewater group has been busy as well. We've been upgrading our technology for monitoring our stations and responding to events quicker with a geospatial interactive map that displays real-time operational data at our more than 1,400 pump stations. The picture you see here on the slide is actually a screenshot of the type of information that we get from this map. We have also been adding more backup generators and diesel pumps to keep our sewer system fully functional when the power is out. We've also worked with our energy team to identify any power quality issues on the electric circuits that are serving our water and wastewater facilities. These efforts and many more are called hardening of our system, and they help to build a stronger system when storms occur. With the additional challenges presented by COVID-19 guidelines, we have refined our plans to ensure our post-hurricane restoration efforts go smoothly for our community. Next slide. We established a COVID-19 Hurricane Preparedness Task Force to identify and address our restoration efforts in this COVID environment. The task force worked to ensure that all areas of operations, contingency planning, incident command, and communications were in place for a COVID scenario. We identified 8 major areas that are critical to our preparation, response, and recovery efforts. We focused our tabletop exercise this year on addressing these key areas with the overlay of the COVID environment. Every department has developed plans under this scenario to ensure public and employee safety, sufficient supplies and resources are available, and protocols for storm restoration procedures have been established. Next slide, please. We conducted our annual hurricane tabletop exercise on May 27th and 28th. This one was a little different than any in the past because it was completely virtual. Not only did we test our plans and procedures as we have in the past, but we also did so completely remotely. Now here's a brief video about our virtual tabletop exercise.
Thank you, Alan. We're adjusting to go ahead and streaming that video now. It'll be available.
Okay. There we go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Greg Corcoran, JEA's Project Outreach Manager. Hurricanes are something that we prepare for all year round, but this year's official hurricane exercise took things to a whole new level. We practiced a scenario that may prove all too real: hurricane restoration in the middle of a pandemic. JEA has spent the last 3 months working through a new set of logistics, how to restore vital electric and wastewater services while practicing social distancing. For instance, JEA is ready to open 2 staging areas if necessary, one on the south side and one on the west side, so mutual aid crews can eat, park their trucks, and possibly even sleep in these areas, all with enough room for social distancing.
The intent is to try and keep these operators in their trucks as they roll through these staging sites.
Because of social distancing, JEA's annual hurricane exercise was virtual this year. The scenario involved a mock hurricane named Nova, a Category 2 storm that made landfall near Ormond Beach and slowly headed north.
We do have a barge that is sitting across the roadway, so that will be blocking extra drive for some period of time.
JEA's Incident Command leadership, along with the City of Jacksonville, reported out on storm response with COVID-19 in mind.
We don't know how spikes in a pandemic might impact our ability to quickly obtain resources.
Because of social distancing, JEA customer advisors may not answer your calls from our downtown headquarters if there's a hurricane this year. They may work remotely to ensure connectivity.
Happen to work from home if they've lost power or internet services, we'll need to coordinate to find a location.
Social distancing during hurricane restoration will impact our entire organization. But just like you, JEA is preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. Stay safe, Jacksonville.
Thank you, Landon. You can go to the next slide and we'll come back up.
It'll be at page 113 of the board presentation materials.
Okay, employee training and refresher sessions are critical to sharpening our saws prior to hurricane season. Our partnership with the city's Emergency Preparedness Division and other agencies continues to be very strong and allows us to work together to recover from storm events. We're also working closely with other utilities and other public power organizations to ensure best practices and mutual aid protocols have been established for a COVID environment. Next slide. As we have in the past, JEA will continue rolling out communications in advance of storm season to educate our customers on about our storm preparations in this COVID environment. We encourage everyone to make your personal plans now, read our JEA Storm Recovery Guide, and visit our website for outage information on our outage map. Next slide. JEA will continue to follow our Restoration 1, 2, 3 process. We will provide frequent updates and communications to this board throughout the event. On JEA.com, you can track outages in your area as well as sign up for text, voice, and email alerts for the latest updates. And as usual, we're always available on social media. Next slide. We are prepared and ready to respond to any storm event, even in this COVID environment. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you very much. I hope you're ready. It looks like you are. It's a big deal.
The team is ready, Chairman.
Terrific. History of water and wastewater expansion. Ivu?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While Landon gets the presentation up, I'll provide a brief background and introduce the presentation. Approximately 65,000 septic tank systems remain in the Duval County, and the pollutants from the filling systems is the growing concern. JEA, together with the City of Jacksonville, has active septic tank phase-out program. Since 2001, over 5,000 septic tanks have been phased out. Currently, the program has developed a priority list of 22,000 parcels within 35 water management areas. 2 areas have projects underway: Biltmore C in Beverly Hills. Biltmore C which has a potential of 52 connections, is currently under construction, about 20%. And Beverly Hills started to start construction in September. The sewer solution in these two areas, as with many other areas, is to build a conventional gravity sewer system in which the sewer eventually flows and is treated at one of JEA's 11 wastewater treatment facilities. We realize that there are other means to reduce the nutrient loading into the river. So in 2019, JEA teamed up with Hazen to identify, evaluate, and determine the most feasible options for technologies, wastewater management strategies, institutional frameworks to apply to many areas. So I'm pleased to have with us today Ms. Joseph, Mr. Patrick Davis, and Damon Anderson from Hazen and Sorta. Ms. Joseph and her project manager will be presenting on the JEA wastewater collection program and alternatives. I'll turn it over to Josephine.
Thanks, Ty. Good morning, Chairman and board members. Next slide, please. We have prepared a short 20-minute presentation for you today to discuss both a little bit of background and the current status of the septic tank phase-out program. Next slide, please. So we'll start with the background. Next slide, please. We know conventional septic systems can impact groundwater, and the major driver here in the Jacksonville area is the St. Johns River water quality, which has impacts by various constituents, including those from septic systems. Next slide, please. This map shows there are numerous communities across the state with active septic system conversion programs to improve water quality. Next slide, please. The top portion of this table is from a previous 2013 board presentation, which shows how previous STPO projects have been funded. The 2016 and 2019 JEA contributions are shown at the bottom of the table. Next slide, please. There are various methods to fund STPO programs, which other communities are using, and include some grants, both from FDEP and the water management districts. But often these grant funds are very limited. Example shown here to the left is Indian River County, where cost share grants made up about 22% of the funds. Next slide, please. Here are some additional examples of communities using various sources of funding for similar programs, including non-ad valorem assessments. Next slide, please. Cost-effective advanced septic system treatment methods are being researched by the Florida Department of Health, and we've been involved in those efforts for many years. Damon Anderson is recognized as a leading expert on septic systems in the state of Florida. Next slide, please. As Hy mentioned, for many years already, the City of Jacksonville and JEA have been phasing out septic systems. There are approximately 65,000 remaining septic systems, which are shown on this map in red. The blue areas on the map are STPO project areas that are either already converted or are currently in process that Hy mentioned. Septic tank phase-out priority project areas were created throughout the program history, and currently there are 35 priority project areas that include approximately 22,000 septic systems. Next slide, please. A STPO project area priority matrix was developed for the program, which is updated annually. Criteria used in the matrix includes environmental, health, welfare, as well as community considerations. Next slide, please. Now, I don't expect you to be able to read this on the slide. It is the matrix that has been used to prioritize STPO project areas developed in concert with the Department of Health and the City of Jacksonville. Next slide. So that kind of takes us to the current program status. Next slide, please. In 2019, JEA sought alternatives to conventional septic systems with consideration for recent technological advances and possible cost reductions. Next slide, please. The project includes 4 phases, 2 of which are underway now, with an option to do the other 2 in the future. The main objective of the overall program is to fulfill the goals on that previous slide. Next slide, please. For phase 1 and phase 2, what we're looking at includes management strategies, treatment technologies, institutional frameworks, funding, and with all those things in mind, we're developing an overall master plan. Next slide, please. This master plan started with a literature review, which could identify solutions for each STPO area. Our search included things like upgraded on-site systems, decentralized, centralized, and integrated management type systems that could include all of the above. Next slide, please. Alternative sewer systems were identified as a possible solution, which typically are smaller in diameter and installed at shallower depths as compared to conventional gravity systems, which would typically result in less cost for excavation, dewatering, and possibly roadway restoration. This is somewhat depicted in the 2 photos shown here, where the one on the left is a gravity installation and on the right is a low pressure vacuum system installation. Next slide, please. We looked at a lot of potential solutions, and this graphic depicts how the screening process will take place to narrow down the best alternatives per STPO project area. An important aspect to the process is project area characterization. Next slide, please. Characterization includes looking at existing customers, land use, existing utilities, topography, and environmental factors, including sea level rise. Next slide, please. We developed criteria that we plan to use to screen alternatives for the priority project areas. Those criteria include cost, implementation, environmental, reliability, etc. Next slide, please. So for phase 1 and phase 2, we are about 40% complete, and we're projected to be finished by May of next year, 2021. Next slide, please. And this just shows the major project deliverables with the timing to completion. Next slide, please. Now Paul has a few discussion points he wants to cover. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. I think we've got some information here, and there certainly has been a good bit of conversation within the community on the issue of septic tank phase out. In particular, I just want to share what I view as the gating issue in terms of moving forward, and that is the identification of capital. Capital is the largest question, always has been the largest question, and when we've been successful in any of the larger scale projects, there's the one that comes to mind that was pointed out early in the presentation was the Better Jacksonville plan that identified $75 million of funds in the plan itself to be directed at 5 or 6 areas for major septic tank phase out. That was shored up with contributions in kind from JEA and a couple of other grants to a total of $93 million. With that kind of money and support, you can have a pretty large impact of, as I pointed out, about 5,000 customers. The challenge that we have from a JEA perspective is that when we look at septic tank phase out, that falls squarely in our wastewater system and our wastewater rates and pricing structure. And so those rates and pricing structure that we have in place
I lost you there.
Paul, I think we lost your audio.
Uh-oh.
Okay, I think we got you now. Go ahead and test that again, Paul.
Okay, so I'll say that one more time. Our current wastewater rates and pricing, which is which when we look at our overall JEA system, there are 3 or 4 sets of rates. There's electric rates, water rates, potable water rates, irrigation rate structures, and there's wastewater. And wastewater rates and pricing are established to charge customers and to recover the cost of operating, repairing, replacing the system, as well as contribution and other sort of direct operating costs. In the current rate structures, we do not recover the charge or the cost of capital or septic tank phase out, or for any capital investment to expand the system. Capital expansion in the wastewater business as well as the water business is paid for through connection fees and capacity fees that generally new construction is charged as they come onto the system. They pay their pro rata cost. So I think about this in terms of just for consideration. We are thinking about moving forward as part of the community discussion and looking at a broad view of economic resource or natural resource modeling to look at and derive the benefits of septic tank phase out, and with the benefits you can more appropriately, I think, identify in terms of who benefits, who might pay for that, and then what type of charges might be appropriate in the long term to develop a long-term capital plan here. I think, for example, when Hy started out, he talked about septic tank phase outs. I mean, the direct impact there is improved water quality in the St. Johns River and the tributaries. And so in terms of that benefit of that capital project accrues to, in essence, all of the citizens of Jacksonville, certainly the citizens along the tributaries and waterways and enjoy the waterways. And so that would be the type of longer-term analysis to at least have a document that would sort of be able to be used from a community perspective and community discussions over the next period of time. And so I'll stop there, Mr. Chairman. That was sort of our view of a little history in terms of this initiative, in terms of the JEA involvement and what we've tried to do really and it's been really the last 15 plus years. And really the challenge to going forward, and that being specifically capital.
Paul, do we have a ballpark feel for what the capital is, how much is going to be needed to do this?
Well, there are very wide ranges in terms of the in terms of capital. I guess the publicly just debated or used number has been about $1 billion at this point in time, and that would that looks at probably $50,000 per connection, which is the most recent cost available to produce the number of units that would reach, in 20 plus thousand in the septic tank phase out areas. So it's a big number, and part of this project work is to identify if there are other technologies, other processes to reduce the current $50,000 per connection fee for basically the legacy gravity systems, which when you saw the picture, the construction cost of that gravity systems in a current development, you can understand the cost and disruption as opposed to the application of other technologies. And so this work will produce a much better cost estimate over the next number of months. But the number is $1 billion, a big number.
Yeah, but the one thing I'd add is technology is moving forward in this area, and improvements in this area are moving forward to try to reduce this cost. This is not something just we are dealing with. Everybody in the world is dealing with it, and I think there's some movement, maybe not this year or next year, but in the next 5-10 years to reduce this and come up with some thoughtful alternatives.
is the damage to the environment significant? I mean, is it worth $1 billion, or is it something that public just says, you know, it doesn't bother me at all right now. Why should we spend the money? What's the crying need for fixing?
I mean, I'd say, John, it's a debate that's been ongoing for last 50 years. And you got density issues on a lot of these septic tanks is a big issue. Is the cost, you know, unless you have the density around, does not make sense. But I mean, Paul, I'd be interested in your thoughts.
No, I think that's right. I think the answer is the specific areas. I mean, I think that in certain areas where there is less density, more land use for the appropriate leaching of tanks, and the tanks themselves are functioning well. Well, there may be a nominal runoff to groundwater or to the river. You probably wouldn't say in that case that there's an economic reason to do that. I think it's more in the failed septic tank areas where density has and septic tanks have been put so close together that there isn't appropriate drainage in areas that are susceptible to flooding and rising water levels, et cetera. Basically failed septic tanks. I mean, that's a public health issue as well as the issue of impact on the environment, the waterways, and part of the identification in terms of the prioritization of the areas. 70% on that chart was indicated in terms of impact on the environment, public health were the highest priorities. And so it's the balance between the two, public health and environmental impact.
Okay, thank you for that report. Any further questions on that?
Well, as we move forward with this dialogue, Paul, looking at the prioritization and ranking the failures, I'd like to see more data on this as we move forward, just to size how many we have as failures. Because, I mean, this was a big issue when I was on the board previously, and it doesn't feel like we've had as much progress as I think we would have hoped over the past decade. So we've got to address the failing ones.
Yeah, and I think to your point, so I think as we're trying to prioritize all of these expenditures in the next couple of years, I think that would be helpful to know, you know, what we had promised or started down the road and never completed, and at the same time, what are the other things that we have to do?
That's helpful.
And I would agree. I think that we can dig into and have the data and sort of as we sort of peel this back and look at it to shape maybe policy or participate in the community conversation. More data, more information will be critical. That's available, and we've just got to package it up appropriately for the conversation. I think that just go back though in terms of to Board Member Lenihan's point, yes, we did have we had it basically put in place a separate authority for the Water Sewer Expansion Authority, and the intent back in the mid-00s was to create a sort of engineering project management company or authority and sort of a virtual utility to run projects. Their primary mission was to obtain grants and funding from other sources to support this. And you know, the days of large grants from the state in Washington for wastewater projects sort of ended in the 70s and 80s. So we found out that the amount of capital necessary for those projects really wasn't readily available, and so we're sort of there again at this point in time. It's a capital question of how the funds are raised and who the appropriate payee or payor is.
And Paul, this is Jody Brooks again, and I was very involved with the prioritization matrix that we put together. And the number one factor that we used and looked at was the Department of Health statistics. You'll see 60 points of the 100 points is based upon the categorization by the Department of Health on primarily failing septic tanks. And so, Ms. Lanahan, I can get the various statistics that go into this matrix and how we prioritize. And the prioritization is really how we expend the limited number of funds we have, and we make the biggest impact based on health, environment, and the things that Paul talked about as the community considerations. But we do base it upon the statistics, the biggest chunk of that being the Department of Health statistics on the failure areas.
Great. Thank you, Jody.
Okay. Keep moving and go to the board policy review. And Joe, will you walk us through the pricing policy, please?
Yes, I will, Chair Baker. Landon, I believe we're on slide 147. Jody, is that correct? 147?
122.
Yeah, so page 147, and these are the numbers that I'm giving is reference to the page numbers of the package that is on the website for the board materials. The members of the board may have a different numbering sequence. So I apologize for that, but the board agenda and the materials that are posted online were at page 147.
Thank you, Jody. Landon, if you could move to the next slide, please. Our interim CFO, Brian Roche, was chomping at the bit to provide this presentation this morning because Brian played an integral role in the development of this pricing policy back beginning in the mid-2000s. We'll go through that history in a moment, but Brian has oversight as CFO for the pricing policy, and on the day-to-day management of the policy is under my colleague, Director Julie Crawford. Julie is our Director of Financial Planning and Analysis and also oversees the budgets, operating and capital budgets, as well as rates. So with that introduction, the pricing policy is intended to provide broad guidance and to facilitate the management, control, and oversight of JEA's pricing structure. Its primary goal is to establish revenue requirements to fully recover the costs necessary to operate and maintain each of the utility systems consistent with its mission through fair and equitable pricing. This includes sufficient revenue for required transfers to the city, depreciation expense, and balance sheet liquidity and other financial metrics. Total revenue requirement of each system, and that's for all of our various systems. We tend to focus on electric and water, wastewater, but we also have district energy and bulk power supply. Each of the revenue requirements must be sufficient to ensure the financial integrity of each of the utility systems, including recovery of debt service, sufficient revenue to meet R&R, renewal and replacement fund requirements, and the maintenance of key financial metrics. It recognizes the operational challenges of managing dynamic businesses with major cost drivers, such as significant regulatory reform, as well as fuel and debt service, which are dependent on global market conditions. Pricing policy contains the guiding parameters that JEA utilizes to develop its financial reporting, rate making, budget, and financial projections. Again, this is a cornerstone policy of every policy we will review with you over the next few months. The last update to the policy was approved in August 2019. It actually went to the Finance and Audit Committee in August 2019 and was later approved at the September full board meeting. It removed the debt management strategy rate stabilization fund language, and a final copy and redline version of the policy, of the pricing policy, is attached to this presentation. Next slide, please, Landon. So a little history, which is significant in its own right on the evolution of this policy. Paul provided a great introduction with respect to water, wastewater, because it's really evolved. The rate making process has really evolved in both systems. So dating back to October of 2005, the policy established the concept of capacity fees, variable fuel rates, a fuel reserve, and a fuel recovery charge. We then went through several periods of time where we continued to fine-tune the policy, the pricing policy, based on financial metrics that were resulting from various benchmarking and rating agency feedback. And the rating agencies obviously have evolved in how they have monitored specific financial metrics as well. So we've had to keep pace as they change their thinking to make sure our pricing policy conforms to that change in thinking. So we had process improvement objectives around liquidity, the debt to asset ratio, and debt policy reserves. Between 2007 and 2011, we implemented additional revenue mechanisms to further improve the financial flexibility and performance of each system. So we got into conservation charges, demand side management, very vital programs for our customers that allowed us to pass through some of these charges directly through customer bills. Environmental charges were a key component of the pricing policy changes that occurred during this 4-year period. Between 2009 and 2012, we addressed philosophy, revenue, and rates. We had emerging pricing concepts specifically around renewables, power purchase agreements, and own versus leased, I call PPA's leased generation. And that's at the time that we began to plan for the phasing in of, well, which was then Plant Vogtle Units 3 and 4 through MEAG Power, the PPA, which was supposed to come online in April of 16 and April of 17. So we had to begin planning well in advance for that nuclear PPA. The 2013 to 2015 period was a significant period for the pricing policy because we made the decision to adopt regulatory accounting in 2015. And so our pricing policy had to change to reflect that. And we moved from largely a cash-based approach to setting rates to this regulatory accounting concept where rates now became based largely, well, at first and foremost on the depreciation of each system. So we changed the pricing policy to reflect that. And regulatory accounting also allowed for the capitalizing or booking as deferred debits and credits large and significant costs, which had we not adopted regulatory accounting, we would have had to run through the statement of income and pension expense and our unfunded actuarial accrued liability, or our net pension liability, which is now booked on the financial statements, would have had to have been expensed. So that was a big moment. We continued to refine metrics during this period of time, and we just continued to tweak the language and various clarifications or based on organization changes as well. And finally, this last 4-year period, we updated items to better align with current operations, coordinated dispatch, our arrangement with Gainesville Regional Utilities is a perfect example. We're doing joint dispatch with GRU. We had to work that mechanism into the pricing policy. We also adjusted the fuel rate stabilization fund target, which was a big change because that fuel reserve target used to be based on this historic 15% of the historic high fuel and purchase power expense for the electric system. We changed that to the previous 5 fiscal years, believing that that was better approximation for our exposure in the near term. So that did significantly lower the fuel reserve balance down to approximately $68 million this year. And as Ricky pointed out, we're projected to be in the $75 to $79 million range at fiscal year end. Just another example of enhancements to the pricing policy that were beneficial both internally and to our customers. Next slide, please, Landon. So the major components of the pricing policy, and it's a relatively short policy. I hope the board members were able to review the policy and to look at the changes that were recently made. Various sections outline the responsibilities included in the policy, various authorization requirements, beginning with the board, and then, again, at the forefront, pricing in each system for both the electric and water and sewer systems. And as we pointed out here for the electric system, and as I mentioned earlier, base rates are set to recover expenditures necessary to operate and maintain the system, again, with a focus through regulatory depreciation expense, but also to provide capital required to maintain the system, the necessary contribution or transfer to the city, any special charges for programs adopted by JEA and approved by this board, and additional revenues required to maintain the financial integrity of the system. Recurring capital will be recovered from revenues each year, and non-recurring or an unanticipated capital, and we put generation spend particularly in this category, which would require bond issuance down the road. Right now, we've set rates necessary to fund maintenance, what we call maintenance capital, or the capital required to keep the electric system operating at a very high level. But then if we were to consider a new generating unit, for instance, we would issue new bonds to do that. The fuel charge is designed to recover fuel and energy costs. Right now, it's been set for a couple of years at $3.25. We will look for opportunities, and we saw during the Finance and Audit Committee meeting last month the opportunity to potentially reduce the fuel charge in the future to offset higher base rates resulting from the Plant Vogtle PPA. And finally, for the electric system, the environmental charge is designed to recover from customers cost of environmental remediation, environmental projects, and compliance with new and existing environmental regulations, excluding the amount collected through the Environmental Liability Reserve. On the water and wastewater side, in terms of their structure and pricing, the base rates, again, are set to recover expenditures necessary to operate and maintain the water and wastewater system. Again, at the forefront, depreciation, much like the electric system, depreciation, capital required to maintain the system function at its very high level, necessary contribution to the city, and any special charges for programs adopted by JEA and approved by the board. Further additional revenues may be required to maintain the financial integrity of the system. We continue to monitor, and obviously the rating agencies continue to adapt to changing environments and regulations as well. So as they change methodologies, we review those methodologies and consider whether changes to the pricing policy should be brought before this board as well. Similar to the electric system, recurring capital is not recovered via the environmental charge. Not recovered via the environmental charge. Will be recovered from revenues each year, and again, that is more maintenance capital. Non-recurring or unanticipated, i.e., storm damage, as is the case with the electric system, may be recovered through issuing bonds, additional new money bonds as well. As I pointed out earlier in the budget discussion, we intend to issue, based on the capital spend in water wastewater, we intend to issue new money bonds next year, as the rates are really set around the funding of maintenance capital as opposed to expansion capital. Capacity fees, as Paul commented on earlier, recover water, sewer, and reclaimed water treatment facility investment and are established to recover 100% of the cost of that construction, including materials, purchasing these services, materials, and the cost of purchasing these services. Little typo there, apologies. And then finally, the environmental charge is designed to recover from customers the cost of environmental remediation environmental projects and compliance with existing and new environmental regulations. Also included in the pricing policy is the requirement for a 5-year projection. We do many of these. We adopt one for the rating agencies, thankfully, but we're constantly in a mode of evaluating our 5-year projections. And the pricing policy also contains requirements around stabilization funds. And as I comment on in our quarterly Treasury Reserve Fund balance report, we have a robust series of stabilization funds that we have funded through customer rates and are set aside for specific purposes and really are authorized at the board's direction. So with that, I will open it up to questions regarding the pricing policy.
Any questions of Joe? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Let's move on to our CEO search committee. Bobby, are you? Do you want to introduce this?
Yes. So John, thank you. One thought would be, John, if you could finalize a search committee, that would be helpful. Number one. Number two, Angie and Carl have been working on job descriptions, and Carl is in the process of reaching out to all board members to get their insights. The one thing I'd say before I hand it over to Angie is we have great professionals here, Angie and Carl's team. And I think it's important because all of us are going to get phone calls, is to make sure that we let the professionals do their work. That's number one. Number two, the thought would be to let Carl and Angie work through a list of applicants. And when we get down to a certain level, a small level, have the committee interview these individuals. And when we get to a final individuals that we look to be, qualified to take this CEO opportunity, we would have the whole board be involved. The other thing is Paul, in my opinion, and I think Paul should be involved once we get down to the final list. So with that, Angie, I will hand it over to you, and you can give any thoughts you have and then introduce Carl to our group.
Thank you, Director Stein. Carl Mykoff and Joyce Gallo are included in the call with us today. They're from Mykoff Partners, an executive search firm that specializes particularly in conducting searches within the utility industry. Carl Mykoff, who is serving as our lead consultant, is the founder of the firm and actually founded the firm back in 1974. Carl has conducted, if not hundreds of thousands of searches nationwide, where he's actually placed CEOs and other leaders within the C-suite. Fortunately, JEA has had the experience of working with Carl prior to this particular search. Back in 2012, Carl and his firm actually worked with the CEO search where Paul McElroy was selected as CEO. So without further ado, I'll turn the meeting over to Carl Mykoff and his assistant, Joy Gallo. Carl.
Thank you, Angie. I appreciate the introduction, the kind words. Bobby, and I appreciate your kind words. Chairman Baker and the rest of the board, it's a pleasure to meet you finally, at least virtually. As Bobby had mentioned to you, we plan to speak with each of you, and I believe we have calls scheduled this coming week through the 30th to talk with each of you to get your input on your expectations, both of what the next CEO will accomplish and their background. So I'm looking forward to working with you on that. To add on to what Angie described, I actually started working in this business in 1971 when I worked for an engineering firm that built nuclear and coal-fired power plants. Please don't hold that against me. I started the firm in 1974. We've grown through the years. We've hired up and trained what I think to be a a very professional staff. Joyce joined us in 2015. Our firm so far, as of today, has completed 196 CEO searches for public power entities similar to JEA and for rural co-ops similar to Seminole Electric Co-op there in Florida. We've done a number of searches in Florida, so we're very familiar with the Florida Sunshine Law and its requirements. Joyce has worked on, I believe, over 20 searches, so she's had some experience in the field as well. To answer the question before anybody has to do the math, I'm 72 years old. I think I'm still alive and well and doing well. So don't hold it against me if I'm 72. We focus really on understanding the industry. We do an awful lot of research on utilities, on how they perform, the individuals who lead them. I'm an economist by education, so I apologize for the fact that I'm more quantitative, and that's the approach. We use an awful lot of metrics. I really appreciate attending this meeting because I found all these presentations fascinating and enjoyed learning all the statistics and all the issues. That helps us a lot in talking with candidates. So I'm going to keep this brief. That's us. That's who we are. And let me open it up to questions, see if anybody has any questions or comments.
This is John Baker. How long do you expect it will take you to do the search? And do you have any candidates that you think in the back of your mind or even in the front of your mind that you think would be particularly good? I'm not asking you to reveal their names, but just whether they exist.
In answer to that last question, yes. We've done this for quite a while, and so we have a number of people. As a matter of fact, Joyce and I have identified probably in excess of 50 people we want to talk to directly. We anticipate posting the job both on our website, on JEA's website, to have a very open process so that people can apply directly. I'm going to guess, yeah, I've already had conversations with people who say yes, that they're interested, and they're both interested in the position. There are people that I have not yet talked to that I anticipate will say yes. I've had discussions with people who are tentative yeses. They're and their comment to me was, I recognize with the Sunshine Law that once I say yes, I'm in for the haul, the duration of the search. So, in answer to time, once we get through the discussions and approve the descriptive information that we're going to provide to candidates, it'll probably take us about 6 to 8 weeks to be in contact with everyone, collect resumes, be back to the search committee with his screened lists to identify those that are going to be most likely to be considered. So all in all, I would say a very comfortable time frame is about 6 months before the new person's in place.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Mr. Chair, go ahead, Marty. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I was just going to ask about Sunshine, but it's very clear that you understand what we're dealing with there. So no questions for me.
Yeah, my question dealt with Bobby's comment about setting the committee. My understanding is that you had made Mr. Stein the chairman and that the entire board was a committee as a whole. But Bobby, do you want a subset committee, or I don't quite understand your request of the chairman about establishing the committee?
Yeah, my feeling is that this, get a subset of the committee. Angie and I have talked about getting a subset of the whole board, and then bring back the finalists to the whole board. It's just trying to make sure we're most efficient with time.
Bobby, I think that's probably a very good idea, and my suggestion, and obviously I haven't talked to anybody, is that you would be chairman. that Joe and Leon would be on the committee and I would be on the committee. So it would be 4 of us.
That'd be great.
If any of you that were appointed are unable to serve, you know, please let us know and we'll replace you.
Happy to serve, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, can I ask, what is when the subcommittee meets, when we're talking about finalists that will come to the full board, have we ascertained a number that will be presented to the full board?
I talked to Angie, and I think in the professional's mind, it's probably going to be 2 to 3. And I think what in their mind is, one thing we got to be cognizant of is sunshine, number 1, and number 2, each one of these candidates are running, you know, they have full-time jobs. So if we can limit the amount of time and effort that each board member, because each board member, to move this selection down to a manageable size, you know, each one of us has to talk to that individual separately. So it's going to be time consuming, and it's going to be, you know, in Angie's opinion, the best process to move this thing forward. And again, as I say to you guys, and, you know, this is something that we got to let the professionals do their job. You know, the perception was the last time we did this search and we had a outcome that was concerning was that, you know, board members got involved, and this is what they do for a living. And both Angie and Carl and his staff are very, very competent. So the thought process would be the finalists would be somewhere around 2 to 3 people.
Okay, I don't have any issue with that. I do think that's an efficient way to move forward. I would just my only pause is that I would hate for us to get down to 2 or 3 and there has not been engagement even with the full board at some level, just in terms of updates that maybe we'll be getting updates from you all as a subcommittee as the process unfolds. I just wouldn't want us to get down to those 2 or 3 and then that's all that the others of us have seen.
That's a great point, but Angie will be keeping in touch with every board member as this process moves forward. I think this is important. So as I say, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, if I can ask Angie, and I'm speaking for her, as this process moves along, that she stays in touch with every board member. Yeah, because I think the more we let Carl and Angie work through this process, the better off we'd be. So you make a good point, and my suggestion is let Angie, and Angie, you speak to this, but I think she can give every person, you know, regular updates that make sense.
Sounds good.
Other questions of Carl? Well, as I've told all of you all, we interviewed a number of search firms, and Carl was a shining star in that group. And I think we're lucky to have him. And he's very direct. He's very forthright. He won't waste our time, and hopefully we won't waste his time either. So anything else? And we'll all be talking to you this week, Carl, is that correct?
This week, and I believe there's one scheduled next week.
Okay, great. Well, look forward to it, and thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you for the kind words.
We, Bobby, can you report on the corporate headquarters? We've got an amendment we need to get action on.
Yeah, I mean, quickly on headquarters too, I'll take that first, John, is we're trying to find 2 sites to give to you and Paul, and we're working to make sure that they're viable, but I think we've narrowed the search of these sites. So we're going to need, you know, to work with Lori Boyer and the mayor's office to make sure that we can accomplish those. And then on the headquarters one, Jody, if you can walk through the amendment and the reasons for the amendment.
My mouth just doesn't want to cooperate with me today. I couldn't get myself off of mute. Sorry, Jody Brooks again. The resolution that was approved for the headquarters one site that the board approved 2020-05 didn't give the ability for the maximum indebtedness to change in the amendment, but we extended the term of the lease from 15 years to 20. And with that, with the size reduction and the additional 5 years, the maximum indebtedness to the amendment did increase. And so the resolution that was originally before you that was approved said that Paul could negotiate the second amendment so long as the maximum indebtedness did not change. Because it did change, that's why there's an amendment that's being proposed to the board. The new maximum indebtedness, the original maximum indebtedness was $160.5 million. With the rest of the reduction in the parking, the new revised maximum indebtedness would be $194 million. So there's a proposal to do a resolution 2020-05A1 that will substitute the Exhibit A that was originally approved to indicate a couple of changes to that that's been negotiated, and then to allow for the maximum indebtedness to increase to the $194 million.
Can we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. Joe, you have something on the Governance and Transparency Committee?
Yeah, sure do, Mr. Chair, and this will be fairly quick. First of all, if you look at the page, it says JEA Board Governance and Transparency Committee. Actually, it should just be JEA Board Governance. I mean, the idea that our process will be transparent, of course, that's what we're here for. But I'm not sure, unless somebody intentionally wanted to put the transparency included in the title, that wasn't the intent, at least on my end. Mr. Chairman and board members, so the Board Governance Committee, the purpose really is to get the updated our board policy manual and also the bylaws. And this is a perfect opportunity because the Article 21 policy has been being updated in a process right now at City Council. And I've been following that closely. And again, it's a good opportunity for the board policy manual, which is 10 years old, needs updated, but we can also incorporate the new provisions that are in Article 21 that are very germane to the functioning of our board for that. Second thing is, as I'm tracking, Mr. Chair, the board will consist of myself as the chairman, and then have Tom Van Osdell, Leon Haley, and Zachary Faison. This is based on what we talked about at the last board meeting. So that's who I'm tracking. And then I'd just like to highlight three things on the committee. First of all, again, it's very important that we incorporate a lot of the important provisions in Article 21 and make sure it's nested, obviously. And I have full confidence we can do that. Secondly, this manual, if you look at it right now, it's real hard to understand what exactly board members are required to do. And just from the way it's organized, to just be in black and white on what exactly our mission, values, goals, and objectives are, et cetera. So I think we can do a lot through everybody's good efforts here on making this manual pertinent to the board members, but then also gain the confidence and the trust from the community and whoever else is a stakeholder that when the board knows what they're doing and we're transparent in how we operate for that. So that's really it in a nutshell, Mr. Chair. And pending any questions, I'd make a motion to approve the charter.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
Can I nominate myself to be crowded in on y'all and join your committee?
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely, Marty.
I'd love that. Thank you.
I never thought anybody would want to join that committee voluntarily. Thank you. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you. Is there any old business? New business? This is our chance for open discussion. Does anybody have any thoughts they want to get on the table while we can talk in the sunshine?
Chair Baker, this is Councilmember Beckton. Can I comment for a second?
Yes. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, and I do want to apologize for being, I'll get on video here, being delayed for the meeting this morning, but I did want to follow up and conclude this meeting by saying that as the council wraps up its 2019-2020 council year and it comes to a close, it's certainly been my pleasure to have been the liaison of the council to JEA. Looking back, it certainly has been an interesting and at times turbulent year, full of issues for which we're all glad to have behind us. I've had the pleasure of working with many good individuals and great individuals with JEA, having sat down with each and every one of you as you've got placed on the board. I know we have some great professionals among you guys. In JEA is just incredible hands with this board, and it's certainly just been my pleasure getting to know you guys on the little bit that we've had a chance to work together, watching these board meetings and watching the future for which the direction of JEA is pointed towards. I just know that JEA's, as they say, better days, great days are still in front of this utility, and it's just been my pleasure to be a part of it as we kind of land this plane and get it going in the right direction, and have the ability to look to put in a new leader at JEA in the months to come, and I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be a part of that, and certainly I wish, if I don't have the opportunity to continue this role next year, but certainly wish everyone well, and I'm always available as District 11 representative and a council member for the city of Jacksonville to help in any way that I can, and I just want to extend my thank you and gratitude for being in this role, and thank you for what you do, everyone at JEA.
Thank you, sir. You're nice to say that, and we appreciate your help. And I want to bring up a subject, and I'd love for you to weigh in on it if you would, along with the other members. The issue that was requested in the opening comments about postponing the disconnection date past July 7th. We have to have a date. Certain people will, if they're not required to pay, simply won't pay until they're required to pay. But more importantly, I worry that we being JEA and we being the city have not gotten the word out sufficiently to the people that we're not going to go turn their lights off day one. We want to work with them. We want to give them time to pay. We want to be incredibly understanding during the pandemic. But we have to pay our bills, and we don't have it in our authority as a charter to waive the bills. So my question to you and to Paul is, are we doing everything we can to make sure those 22,000 ratepayers that are not paying know that they need to get with us, they need to work with us? Have we done everything to make sure that they are aware? Because clearly the speaker that came this morning, felt like we were just going to shut the lights off on July 7th, and that's not the point at all. I just think this is too important for us not to be in lockstep with City Council and ourselves on this issue.
Chair Baker, I certainly understand as a former business owner that at some point the debt has to come due from everyone. And one of the unintended consequences of delays, to your point, is that people's, their debt gets bigger, and they get in more trouble. They don't get in less trouble. I do think communicating by the various means that we all have to the ratepayers that there is a date. You'll never. I find in things that we do that not everyone will get the message. That there will be folks that ignore it. There will be folks that will, just have an excuse of why they didn't get the word, and those are things that we'll try. That I think we'll all try to work around and do the best job we can. I mean, through my means and social media, I'll, as a council member with the constituents that I represent, we'll get that word out once we come up with a date. We are trying to pass legislation to allow folks to initiate a benefit that if they'll call JEA and work out some payment plan, that they can get some grant dollars. So yes, I understand the delay, was requested as council works through this grant stipend that, but that wasn't for a prolonged period of time. That to your point, that we got to set a date and work from that. And I'll certainly allow Paul to chime in on your comments as well.
Thank you.
And I would just add that I think we've done an extraordinary measure in terms of reaching out to the individual customers in terms of our communication of emails and phone calls, and the public discussion and the very compassionate and constructive discussion, successful discussion that's been taken place with the various council committees that had essentially 3 different proposals that have sort of come together as one, and in the form of legislation that Councilmember Becton pointed to that will be voted on this evening, was the complete participation and collaboration of JEA, the council members, and the administration to try to solve or put a solution in place that will allow these customers and citizens the best possible landing that I think the minds of JEA, customer support folks, council members, and the city administration can come into at this point in time. And I would just say that, the call out there is to, again, customers to work with us and work through this. We have alternative plans in the area of payment plans that have been extended, 3 times as long as historically viewed, as well as reducing deposit requirements, waiving fees and connection charges, et cetera. So think there's an all-out pressure here in terms of on the 7th at midnight, or anyone that's in that category ends up, disconnected.
Oh, we've lost
Again,
you.
work individual.
Yeah, Paul.
Can you restate that, Paul? We couldn't hear you.
Yeah, and so we will continue to work with customers when the 7th comes, and it's not going to be a stroke of midnight and everyone is cut off. It's going to be phased in over the 24, 36, 48, 72, 96 hours our way through, so that there'll be an initial group that will, in fact, get cut, but there'll be room in the system to stimulate that conversation and then work with them and make the application of the plans and programs that we have in place.
John, my suggestion is that, whether it's you and Paul together, write a letter to the editor or something like that, and include the mayor, include Scott Wilson or whoever the president is, and lay out what's been done in a simple fashion and what we're trying to do, so people do feel that they understand the process. Because it's not only the people that are affected, it's people that aren't affected that think we're not doing an appropriate job. And the mayor and the city council have done a great job with getting grants. I think we have a plan in place that makes sense. I totally agree with the date, and I totally agree that we have to get paid. But I think if you guys could think through laying this out, it would be helpful to the general public.
I agree with you, Paul. Can you take that on?
Absolutely.
One more little thing.
And Chair Baker?
Yes, sir.
I don't know if it was brought up, probably not, but just to add to this, I engaged the leadership of JEA this week, and as a PSA, we do have organizations out there that are disguising themselves as JEA. I received my household received a phone call that I was able to record and provide to JEA that basically said my services were going to be disconnected in 3 hours if I didn't press 1 and connect to a representative. And while there's an awful lot of folks out there that are on the disconnection list, someone is taking advantage, certainly, of the situation, as they, I'm sure, normally do. But this is even more concerning in the fact that a lot more people are in a disconnection state, and if this whoever's doing this, calls these customers, they're going to be put into a very precarious situation where fraud is being initiated on them. And I was, like I said, I was able to give that recording to JEA. I'm going to publish it in my social media, newsletters and so forth, but we should certainly be conscientious as we do talk to JEA customers that this is very prevalent right now in our city, that this is going on. So just thought I'd share that as well.
Thank you. It's horrible.
Yes.
Any further thoughts on this? Everybody okay? Okay. Do you have a report that you'd like to make, Paul?
Yes, I do. There are a few items I'll run through, Mr. Chairman. Mostly a report on external relations. We, since our last meeting, did have met with each one of the ratings agencies. Chair Baker participated in those conversations. I think they went well in terms of the introduction of certainly the board, the strategy of going forward. We then followed up immediately after the management changes and worked through those with the agencies as well. They understand that and are working towards a rating for this upcoming bond deal. We did have an opportunity to meet with the editorial board of the Times Union yesterday. Again, Chairman Baker participated in that conversation with the board. We spent about an hour and a half just talking about a wide range of issues of JEA in the community. I think it should be a positive coming out of that. Met with NASA.
We can't hear you, Paul.
Paul, we lost you again.
Okay. Let me try that. Are we there?
Yes,
okay, I'm going to just talk directly in. I don't know why. We engaged with Nassau and Johns County. On a daily
Paul, we
basis.
lost you again.
Yeah. I'm going to pass then, Chair Baker, as I seem to be having communication issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want me to? Yes.
I'll follow up with board members.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can hear you now.
Okay. And then I'll just say COVID, we meet on a daily basis and watch the counts. We have had an increase of infection with the workforce. We're monitoring that and pushing more safety, more requirements for masking. And that's a daily effort in terms of the full senior leadership team, keeping aware of that and any potential outcome. We did announce, and I did have the opportunity, I believe, to speak with the individual board members on Vogel, and we'll continue to engage with that. I plan to reach out to each member and give a full background of the project and sort of where we are in litigation. And then hopefully in the next 30 days, we can have that shade meeting and talk about the path forward with respect to litigation and cost. We started some work on the SJRPP land and looking at economic development opportunities. We've talked about the disconnection. And at this time, I just want to publicly thank Joe Arfano for his great work over the last 6 months and stepping up in the interim role. And welcome Brian Roche as new interim CFO. Joe did a fantastic job. Appreciated all of his efforts and support of the organization and of the board and keeping the finance organization going. Joe has a deep passion and love for Treasury. We want to make sure that he is focused on that area and enjoying every minute on the job. And Brian comes in with a background of really the finance, budgeting, planning, accounting, and capital budgeting has his engineering background too. So I think they're going to be a great team to look at cost structure, capital plans, and help us on a go forward basis. So that's my report, Mr. Chairman. Unless there's any questions, I'll certainly turn the mic back to you.
Questions of Paul? Well, I would just say, Paul, again and again and again, how much we appreciate you being here, the work you've done. It was interesting as we talked to the Times Union yesterday, the Plant Vogel comes to mind, and what does that mean for rates and so forth. And just in his short period of time, Paul has taken money out of both the capital and the O&M budget that will certainly, as you see in the budget, we have no rate increase proposed for next year. He's making a difference, and he's made some hard decisions, and I'm grateful for it. I appreciate all you all have done too. It's really been a pleasure to work with people that all seem to be on the same page, working hard, and we're really getting a lot done. It's amazing what has happened in a short period of time, and I thank all of you all for making that be the case. I have nothing further unless there are announcements or other things that other people would like to bring forth. I would move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everybody have a great day.
So moved.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.